Want to bring to order the March 23rd, 2021 regularly scheduled board meeting for the Richland 2 Board of Trustees. If I can please have a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move that we convene an executive session for a discussion of student appeal and student admission request into the district's adult education program.
Second.
Motion's been made by Dr. Caution Parker, seconded by Ms. Mackey. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, is everyone logged in? Can we vote via computer? All right, if everyone can raise their right hand or say aye if you're on the phone.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes unanimous. We'll now convene into executive session. I want to reconvene the March 23rd, 2021 regularly scheduled board meeting of the Richland 2 Board of Trustees, where we just came from executive session to discuss the items that were made in the motion to go into executive session. If I can now have a motion to for the end of executive session, please.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move that the records show that we ended executive session at 5:35 p.m.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? All in favor, if you're in person, hand vote. If you're on the phone, if you'll do a voice vote, if you're in favor. Dr.
Aye.
Parker, we're voting, yep. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the inspirational moment and the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A year ago, March 23rd, 2021, I made a note that I actually memorialized on social media as we embarked upon the beginning of what we thought would be a few weeks and ended up being a year plus. And the post was, times of extreme crisis can bring out the best or the worst in us. I'm reflecting on videos of people fighting in stores over toiletries while also reflecting on random acts of kindness, such as a nursing home caregiver singing to residents. Once this pandemic is over, how will we be remembered? For showing the very worst of ourselves or for showing the very best of ourselves? To the superintendent, executive support staff, executive staff, teachers, aides, cafeteria staff, support services, bus drivers, social services, and far more people that I can begin to list in the confines of this setting. Thank you for what you have offered us for the past year and for a community who has been supportive and trying to innovate as we found ways to educate our students as safely as possible. You thought about it, you innovated, and you made a way for students to be educated, to receive meals, to receive services, and so very much more that the public is not aware. You made a decision, you made a way, not without trial and error. We are human, we are imperfect, we are fallible, but we are also willing and determined. To that end, I'd like to share something that we've all heard, I'm sure, before by Walter Wintle. With regard to the situation, if you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you have lost. For out in the world, you'll find success begins with a person's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster person, but sooner or later, the person who wins is a person who thinks he can. If you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Now we'll have the approval of our agenda. If I can please have a motion. Ms. Mackey, if you'll hit your mic for me.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the agenda of the March 23rd, 2021 regular board meeting of the Richland 2 School Board of Trustees.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, if we can have the vote. And Dr. Scott, are you logged in?
I am.
Okay, we'll vote on the computer now.
Oh, my connection just lost, so my vote is yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. We will now move on to our special recognitions. Dr. Davis. Oh, me first? Okay, sorry. Thank you. So it is a special treat tonight that we have on within our special recognition. So in addition to celebrating this year's teachers that earned their national board certification, which we'll recognize momentarily, I want to recognize Miss Amelia Mackey, who's receiving a plaque and a pen tonight, and I'm going to hand that to her here in a minute, from the South Carolina School Boards Association, in recognition of her completion of the association's Boardmanship Institute. So the Boardmanship Institute offers 6 levels of training focused on leadership skills for board members on state and national educational issues. And the Institute helps board members develop skills, stay abreast of educational issues, and attend workshops focused on school law, advocacy, and legislation, which encompass our majority of our roles as board members. And Ms. Mackey, she's been on the Richland 2 board since 2014, and during that time, she served as our secretary, our vice chair, and chair, and is currently serving as the Region 8 director for the South Carolina School Boards Association. So, Ms. Mackey, it is my honor to congratulate you on completing all 6 levels of the Institute, and thank you for representing us as a board and district in that way. So let me give you your pen and plaque. You'll come forward. Yeah, come on, baby. All right, now I'll pass it off to you, Dr. Davis, for our Teachers of the Year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our viewing public, and those of you who are in attendance, I have Ms. Libby Ruth, our Senior Chief for Communications, who will be presenting to you this evening the individuals in our school districts, our teachers who serve as National Board Certified. We have 2, I think, sections of teachers to discuss, 3 categories of teachers to share with you. Those who are the newly certified, those who are in their 2nd certification, and those who are in their first renewal, 2nd, and new.
Yes.
So I'll turn it over to Ms. Ruth. Ms. Ruth.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, Mr. Manning, and board members. It's an honor to be up here. And as I was saying, taking the picture, I almost kind of forgot what I'm supposed to do, but hopefully it's like riding a bicycle. It'll come back to me. First, I want to say, even though they could not be with us tonight because we are limiting our folks coming into the board meetings, we did let our newly national board certified teachers know. So and asked them to watch from home. So if we all wave at the cameras, they are hopefully watching us from home, or we'll watch it later on. So they are seeing themselves recognized. The National Board Certification was designed to develop, retain, and recognize accomplished teachers and to generate ongoing improvement in schools nationwide. It is the most respected professional certification available in K-12 education. Richland 2 has always been a leader in National Board Certified teachers, and Shelly Kriegshaber in my office this week checked with Sarah and confirmed that we have more than 700 teachers, which is 2nd in the state, who have accomplished this feat, and we are first in the state with the number of teachers currently going through the process. At this time, we'd like to recognize our new first-time National Board Certified teachers, as well as our teachers who have earned recertification, and then those who have actually earned it twice. Since they could not join us tonight, we have them here on the presentation, and as I mentioned, I hope they are watching us from home. So let's begin and meet our newly certified. We have Mandy Collins from Longleaf Middle, Joseph Ben Kelly from Blythewood High School, Sarah Greer Theus from Bethel Hanbury Elementary, and Julie Whitney from Pontiac Elementary. Those are our newly certified teachers, and let's give them a round of applause. For those teachers who are earning the renewal for the first time, let's meet Nick Ashley from Blythewood Academy, Brooke Beatonbow from Ridgeview High School, Lindsay Belleville from Bridge Creek Elementary School, Jill Carroll from Dent Middle School, Lori Clark from Center for Knowledge, Richard Mark Dyer from Blythewood High School, Jennifer Frazier from Jackson Creek Elementary School, Sarah Hayes from L.W. Condor Elementary School, Erica Leach here at the district office, Jessica Miller, also at the district office, Richard Moore, Blythewood High School, Marianne Prudhomme from Dent Middle School, Roxana Russell from Polo Road Elementary, Virginia Solomons from E.L. Wright Middle School, Amanda Stiglbauer from Blythewood High School, Terry Stone at Round Top Elementary School, Joy Walker from Kelly Mill Middle School, and Arlie West from Bookman Road Elementary, our first-time renewals. Congratulations to them. And now for those teachers who are earning their renewals for the second time. Angela Hill, Westwood High School, Suzanne Pender, Center for Inquiry, and Allison Wisnett from Muller Road Middle School, our second-time renewals. Congratulations to them. And so again, congratulations to our latest class of National Board Certified Teachers. You are to be commended for your dedication to being a lifelong learner and to always striving for excellence. Congratulations again. And that concludes special recognitions.
Thank you. I think the board takes a lot of pride in the fact that not only are we about education for our students, but also for our staff, for board members, so that we can all be better people and better teachers for our students. And so we're very proud of our teachers who have earned their national board and re-earned that. And Ms. Mackey, for your award too, for your education and dedication to the district. We will now move on to the consent agenda. If I can please have a motion on the approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey,
I move to approve the consent agenda for the March 23rd, 2021 regular board meeting.
motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Can I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, if we can please have the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have public participation, and I have Quinn and Keisha Brown signed up. If you could please come forward. And please be advised that this is both streamed and recorded on YouTube, and we ask that you not mention any specific individuals by name.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So my name is Quinn Brown, and this is my lovely wife, Keisha Brown. We have two sons that attend school here in the district, an eighth grader and a third grader. We understand that this has been a less than ideal school year due to COVID-19, social distancing, mandates, and restrictions. We're certain that the district has been doing everything possible to comply with CDC rules and to keep our children safe. But we're here today to just let you know that we have a solution for the pollution, and I'll explain what that means. Most of the safety protocols that are in place now are really addressing the surface areas, walls, windows, high traffic areas as far as touching light switches, keyboards, and things of that nature. But even with this valiant effort, the one area that seems to be going unaddressed until now is the air. As we all know, viruses, bacteria, and things of that sort, they don't go from the surface up. They come from the air down. And so what we wanted to share with you today is a product called the Air and Surface Pro. It is actually, the secret sauce, if you will, is called Active Pure Technology. It's a NASA certified technology that is very prestigious and has actually been inducted into the Space Technology Hall of Fame. We're only one of 75 technologies, including GPS, LASIK surgery, and satellite TV. The Air Surface Pro, again, it addresses the air first. It's not a passive filter. It's not a passive like your HEPAs and things like that. But with the Active Pure technology, it actually sends out what we call air scrubbies to attack viruses, bacteria, and things in the air, including the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which leads to COVID-19. Everything has been done in an FDA-compliant lab. We have actually, proof and everything to validate the claims made. But again, NASA has been using this technology, and now it's been made for us here. I'm going to say here on Earth. Two other products that are included in that is a Fresh Air Mobile, which is used in vehicles or spaces from 0 to 300 square feet. Again, not only attacking and cleaning the surfaces, but that which is in the air. My wife and I are both wearing what is called an Air Personal. Ionization has now created a 2-foot shield that attaches itself to pollutants and things in the air, pulling it out of our breathing area. And so, Mr. Davis, as busy as you are, there have been emails sent to different people of renown, if you will, or those in authority, just to try to gain an ear or an eye so that this information can be shared with those that can make a decision.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
I'm sorry. You had 3 minutes and your time is up, but thank you very much for coming forward today and talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will next move on to our item 8.1, voting on the executive session item, student appeals. If I can please have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I move to uphold the district's decision to send student number 1 to Blythewood Academy.
Motion's been made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, if we can have the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8.2, student admission request into the district's adult education program. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I move to approve student admission request into the district's adult education program for student number 1.
Motion's been made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, if I can please have the vote. And the motion passes 7 yes, 0 no. There are no items under 8.3. And so we will now move on to old business action requested. If I can have a motion on the policy approval for GBGAB, policy GCOA, and policy Title IX.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini?
I move to approve policy GAB, lactation accommodation, policy approval of GCOA, evaluation of instructional staff, and the approval of policy Title IX, rescinding policy GBAA and rescinding policy JIAA.
Motion's been made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? Correct. That is correct. Dr. Holmes. All right, is there any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. And the motion passes unanimously, 7 yes, 0 no. Item 9.4, approval of the budget surplus. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. McFadden.
I move to amend the fiscal year 2021 general fund budget to include the following allocations, utilizing a portion of the fiscal year 19 to 20 budget surplus for $6.45 million to give one-time bonus of $1,000 net after taxes to all full-time permanent employees and a one-time bonus of $500 net after taxes to all part-time employees, and $3.5 million transferred from the general fund to the building fund to help offset future capital improvement needs that are typically funded through the annual 8% debt limit borrowing.
Motion's been made by Ms. McFadden. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Scott. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Agostini.
I'm sorry, I have a question, and I fully support the teacher bonuses, but my question is, how can we assure the net is $1,000 or assure that it's $500? What happens after taxes if it's $999?
We're going to make sure if we err, it's going to be on the upside. It'll be $1,001 instead of $999.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Miley, is there any further discussion? With no further discussion, we'll have the vote. Motion passes 7 yes, 0 no. Next, we have an update on our legislative priorities. And is that going to be Dr. Holmes? Yes.
What about now? Okay. Okay, good evening. Okay, we have a legislative update for you all on some of the bills that we were talking about the last couple of weeks. And first, before we go any further, I'd like to say thank you to Libby for providing us with this update and keeping us abreast of everything. I appreciate your help. Thank you so much. The first one, the bill that we highlight is H3609. This bill is the one about, it's been signed into law. Some of the highlights and we supported this, most of us did, appropriation of up to $50 million to the Executive Budget Office to provide teacher step increases for the 2021 school year. Another highlight of this bill classifies that the Department of Education must distribute the funds to each school district. Each school district will receive funds. Request each school district provide a one-time lump sum payment of the entire step increase due to the employee, including any amounts in arrears by June 15, 2021, or the school district may utilize its current payroll system to pay the step increase if the first payment retroactively includes all previous payments that would have been due to the eligible employee. Another highlight, make the step increase, and this is a very important one, make the step increase for the 2021 school year permanently. I think everybody's pretty happy about that one. I think the other concern that I brought up about, which they have not addressed yet according to Libby, is there's still some concern for the teachers that are over the step amount of years of 23 in some cases and 28 in some cases. So we still need to have our voices heard on that end of it because those teachers deserve an increase also. Also, bill number S676. A highlight there is this is a new bill, and this is a bill that we need to keep our eye on. It's attached to a previous bill. S676. This legislation would create educational savings accounts, in other words, vouchers, that would be funded by the reappropriating state-funded, originally directed to the local school funds, originally directed to the local school districts. The bill is similar in scope to H3976, but there are some technical differences in the legislation. And on Tuesday, March 13th, the Senate introduced it in its version to add those to account, savings account bill H3976. The bill has 20 sponsors so far, but this is a bill, if you're for public education, you might want to consider consistently looking at. We're looking at this one again. That is a new bill, S676, and it's attached to an older bill, H3976. Lastly, as our update for tonight, bill number H4100. And this is moving to the House floor for debate as we speak. And this is the budget for the upcoming year. And it's moving to the full House in a minute. This bill for the 2021 state budget will propose a $9.6 billion state spending plan. The proposal for K-12 education includes an increase of $50 million to the Educational Finance Act that is estimated to increase the base student cost from $2,498 per student to $2,500 per student. That's a highlight there. Another highlight, $10.2 million in EIA reoccurring funding to expand full-day 4-year-old kindergarten programs for an estimated 600 children in the South Carolina Early Reading, Developmental, and Educational Program. Another highlight, $5.5 million increase in EIA funding to place a nurse in every school. And in light of what we're going through, I think that is an excellent idea. $4 million increase for 1% increase for the employer retirement contribution. $1 million increase in EIA funding for the Teacher Fellows Scholarship. $2 million increase EIA funding to hire school resource officers, which we need that. $8.4 million increase in EIA funding and $10 million in non-reoccurring funding for instructional materials. $30 million in lottery funding for instructional materials. These are some of the highlights that we've had go on the House floor, and that some are continuing to go on. We will keep you posted. Again, thank you, Libby, for being on top of this. The committee and myself appreciate you very much. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that update. We will now move on to new business action requested. Policy suspension of JFABB, admission of exchange and international students. If I can, please have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I move to suspend policy JFABB for the 2021-2022 school year.
If I can have a second. Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Ms. Agostini.
Have we been approached by any organizations or groups for the next school year to actually do this?
I have our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Franklin, who supervises our schools, to provide some information regarding that.
Yes, ma'am. We've received 2 requests, each for 1 student
Okay.
to join us
Okay.
next year. And typically over the past 5 years, we've had about 8 students per year. We've gotten 2 requests for next year already.
Okay, but this will say we're not accepting students next year. We're
If
going to
approved,
continue
yes,
on.
ma'am. Mhm, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, with that, we'll have the vote. Dr. Davis?
I suggest, I wasn't quite sure in the motion that was made, should we specify the academic school year if that was specified?
That's a great point.
Should be brought to light by Ms. Agostino's question for upcoming school year,
Yes.
21-22 school year, and then we revisit it at the end of that school year based on where we are.
Okay, so the motion that's listed on the screen says to suspend it for the
Okay.
2021-2022 school
Thank you.
year. So that was the motion that was made? Yes, okay.
I didn't hear the year, that's why I'm asking. I didn't hear it, I heard it.
And honestly, I don't recall if I said it, but I thought I was reading what was written.
That's what I
So, okay.
Right, yeah, okay. All right, so we're good. So we're still on the vote for the motion. And the motion passes unanimously, 7 yes, 0 no. We'll now move on to items 12, new business, no action requested. Dr. Davis, your superintendent highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our viewing public, and those of you that are in attendance, it's my honor and privilege to give you share with you the superintendent highlights for this evening's board meeting. We'll start out leading the highlights with tonight with phase 3 of our reopening schools plan and the vaccination of vaccine clinics. So phase 3, reopening schools and vaccine clinics. Phase 3 of our reopening schools plan begins this week. Students are coming to school 5 days a week with a half day on Fridays. Schools are also continuing to provide e-learning for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year. Vaccination clinics for employees will begin on Thursday and Friday, March 25th and 26th at Westwood High School through our partnership with Providence Health. Second doses will be administered on April 15th and 16th. These will be asynchronous e-learning days for our students. Now shift to extended child development deadline. The deadline to apply for child development has been extended by 1 week. The deadline to apply is now Friday, April the 2nd. Richland 2 Center for Child Development offers free 4K child development classes to students who qualify based on developmental needs, pupils in poverty status, or other risk factors. Children must be 4 years of age on or before September the 1st, 2021 to apply for the 2021-2022 school year. It's my honor to share with you last month's rookie teacher of the block. This is Chelsea Counts, a first-year teacher at Dent Middle School. It's the 2021 H&R Block Rookie Teacher of the Block for the month of February. In addition to being a model teacher, Ms. Counts, a 6th grade math teacher, is taking on several extracurricular opportunities to serve her school and community. Each month, an induction teacher is chosen as the Rookie Teacher of the Block, and then an overall winner, Rookie Teacher of the Year, will be selected in Richland 2. I'm super excited to share with you the results of our Principals with Heart campaign in our partnership with the American Heart Association. Thank you to the entire Richland 2 family. We have officially surpassed the $60,000 goal for the Principals with Heart campaign, and I believe we actually ended up with $64,000 total. February was American Heart Health Month. The $60,000 raise is a record amount in the Midlands Heart Walk, which is a digital experience this year. And this is our very first year of participating in the Heart Walk and in this campaign. And we set a Midlands record out the gate in the first year. So we're super excited about that. And thank you to all of our faculty and staff and community that supported this worthy endeavor. To share a little bit of information about STEM finalists. Congratulations to Susan Matthews, a science teacher at Richland Northeast High School. She is one of 5 finalists for the 2021 South Carolina STEM Educator of the Year Award. And it seems that this is an annual event in Richland too, where we've had now 3 teachers in a row that have been a finalist for the STEM Teacher of the Year Award. So we're super excited about celebrating and recognizing her for her accomplishments and continuing the tradition of having exceptional science teachers recognized for this award. And then next to last is Women in Leadership. Our Chief Diversity and Multicultural Inclusion Officer, Dr. Helen Grant, will be a panelist for the Women in Leadership Luncheon on Thursday, March 25th. The event, sponsored by the Leadership Columbia Alumni Association, seeks to provide support to emerging and existing female leaders right here in the Midlands. So congratulations to Dr. Grant. And just last but not least, the month of March is definitely the month for celebration. March is Women's History Month, Irish American History Month, Youth Art Month, National Nutrition Month, Music in Our Schools Month, and Red Cross Month. And of course, this week, the first week of this month, we celebrated School Social Work Week. So to all of you who fall in that category, we celebrate you, we recognize you, we appreciate you, and we say thank you for all that you do to improve our community and our school district. That concludes the superintendent's highlights for this evening's board meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We will now move on to item 12.2, a report on school start times. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Mr. Chair, members of our board, to our viewing public, and those of you who are in attendance today, we're going to provide some information for you in a form of an update for school start time. This report will be given by Dr. Marsha Lynn Franklin, our Assistant Superintendent for Leadership in Schools, and also our Chief for Operations and Logistics, Mr. Will Anderson. Dr. Franklin, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Mr. Manning, members of the board, over the past few years, district administration has been researching and evaluating school start times. This project started as a result of research published by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics. This project also came as a result of a pattern we saw a few years ago with late buses, particularly at the high school level. You may recall a series of board meetings where parents expressed some concerns about the timeliness of bus operations. This school year, district administration has continued the process of researching and evaluating school start times. We're now at a point where we'd like to share some of our findings with you. This is not a proposal of new start times, but rather a presentation designed to start a conversation around what we've learned so far. That is the background that brings us here today. Tonight's presentation will include a synopsis of the research on sleep times, a review of survey data completed by Richland 2 partners, some school start time scenarios, an opportunity for discussion, and the immediate next steps for this project. As I mentioned earlier, the research provided by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and the revised recommendations on sleep times by the American Academy of Pediatrics piqued our interest in evaluating our school start times. In 2018, we began working with the Hannibal Research Organization to explore additional research sources and to conduct a survey of Richland 2 partners. In the spring of last year, when COVID began, we paused the project and we resumed it in the late fall of the current school year. This is a one-page summary of the research. Please note that the complete Hannibal literature review is included in your electronic packet. In summary, teens often need more sleep than they actually get. Sleep can affect academic performance, and sleep can also affect health and behavior. This slide contains examples of how sleep or the lack thereof affects the body. You can probably relate to some of these even as an adult. These are 4 data points from the survey that was administered in 2019 to both parents and employees. Please note the complete survey analysis is in your electronic packet. I call your attention to the last data point where 47% of all respondents, that would include elementary, middle, and high school parents and employees, felt that we should consider changing start times. There's almost a 50-50 split between that group and the 53% of respondents that did not feel we should consider changing start times. And this is why district administration is continuing to just explore the topic. Student sleep and student safety were identified as the most significant factors when setting school start times. Another significant factor is bus transportation. And with that, I'll yield to Mr. Anderson, who will share with you all things transportation.
Can't ever be too careful. So thank you, Dr. Franklin. As you all know, one of the biggest impact with our school start times, or the challenges, I should say, or opportunities, is our transportation. In an ideal world, in a world that we didn't have to rely on transportation, we could, in essence, kind of pick our start times based on the research that Dr. Franklin has mentioned today. But unfortunately, our state, I say unfortunately we're able to do that because the state owns and maintains all of our school buses. They've done this forever. We provide the drivers. And so having state-owned buses, we do not have enough buses to just use the school times we want to. So unfortunately, it's driven by transportation. So we do have a 3-tiered system many of you are aware of. So right now, we have middle school goes first. That same bus then does an elementary route, and that same bus then does a high school route. And so we have to split our times accordingly so that we can make sure we get our kids to school on time, safely and on time. So some of the data points that I think are important as we're trying to determine ideal start times based on transportation. Again, if we didn't have to worry about transportation, we'd pick the best times on research, but using that, we have to consider all these data points. So I mentioned the state-owned bus fleet. Our elementary school is the highest ridership. That is the most ridership we have. So we want to make sure we put that in a position for success. High schools has the lowest ridership. So where would that make sense in terms of how we can continue to make sure kids get to school on time and safely? Most of our double routes are at the elementary level. And what that means is bus 1 goes to Jackson Creek, turns right back around and bus 1 goes to the same neighborhood to pick up more kids. So they have so many kids in a particular area and they can get there back and forth. Elementary routes takes the longest to complete. That shouldn't be a shock. Younger kids trying to figure out where they go to sit, etc. Another part of that is that in the afternoon, for example, if you have to have a pre-K or K has to have a parent, guardian, or someone to pick them up at the bus stop. If that person's not there, we take that child back to the home school. So that can cause delays for that. Ideal time between routes is 45 minutes. I know during COVID is not a great example, but because of the limited capacity on buses and what we've been doing, we have not, unless there's been a major incident, have not been late this year. For example, 2 weeks ago, I was at Spring Valley at 3:30 when they're dismissing, and every single bus for Spring Valley was waiting for dismissal. That never happens, ever. So I know it's different, but part of that is we've had 45-minute increments in between time. Some other things to consider is this early start times. Earlier, say if we put elementary first, we're now talking about elementary kids getting picked up in the dark. Middle school kids do that now. Some of our neighboring districts do that, Richland, one and others. So it's not a new concept, but it's definitely something we have to be concerned about. And also late times, we want to make sure we end at the very latest at 4. After school activities, work, etc. for our children. A lot of our students, high school students in particular, are participating in activity or participating in work. So we want to make sure we're conscious of that as well. So some current things just to let you know where we're at, and then some of the scenarios we've ran. I'll just run through those and just get our discussion happening. Is currently before COVID, our schedule looked like this, with at middle starting first, elementary 30 minutes afterwards, and high school 35 minutes afterwards. And routinely, we had 7 to 8 buses late. Sometimes that'd be more, sometimes we'd be okay. But as Dr. Franklin mentioned earlier, we've had these discussions for probably many years about late buses. And as we continue the growth, continue all the construction, road construction, continues to pose challenges. All this information is in your board packet, a lot with like 6 or 7 different things we provided for you. So if it's difficult to see this, our transportation department has done a tremendous job running scenarios, and they continue to work more scenarios. So I give kudos to our team who have worked really hard on the projected numbers. So what they're looking at when we're talking projected numbers is based on our projection of what we expect to have ridership, like we've had in the past, like we do any type of enrollment projections. They're projecting those riderships. And so we've taken that information and looked at some key points based on that data. You can see at the top, projected buses late. The third column is meets recommended start time. Based on that start time in the data, is saying that adolescents, middle and high school students should technically start no earlier than 8:30 a.m. So middle school and high school should start at 8:30. So that's what that chart means. Time between routes, again, that key factor of 45 minutes is key. And then the effect in the morning and afternoon, meaning how late it gets, it may affect in the dark or the elementary. So you can see the different scenarios we've ran. You can see there's some highlights that help. One of the things of scenario 5 is an example. It kind of hits a lot of those things other than the high school starting at 8:15, but we really didn't see in our projections no late buses, because you have 45-minute windows in between those. You've got your largest ridership in the morning, your second largest in the last, and then you have your time to make up ground with your lowest in the middle. But you can see there's some other scenarios that also hit some of those criteria. And so we continue to tweak this and work these with the most available data. Again, this is just some things we've done to get the conversation started. We know this is a challenging topic. As Dr. Franklin's mentioned, 50% roughly of our community is split on whether we should do this or not. But we also understand what the research and data states, in particular regarding our middle school students who start at 7:30 a.m. Some of them are at school at 6:45 a.m. when they get dropped off by the bus, and then we're expecting them to start their day. So we understand the importance of that. How about our next steps is continue our work with our advisory council. We actually have already shared with the faculty advisory council, the parent advisory council. I believe Dr. Franklin and others are sharing with the students this week. We've been meeting to discuss focus groups and community conversations. We met yesterday to talk about that process. And then, ideally, if this is something that we feel confident moving forward with, potentially rolling this out in August of 2021. But we also don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. If we feel like we need to push this a little further, we can, because it's a big deal. But it's also a good opportunity to go ahead and do this. With that, Dr. Franklin and I are here to answer any questions, as well as Dr. Davis, anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Ms. Mackey and then Dr. Holmes and then Ms. Agostini.
Actually, the question I was going to ask was about next steps, and you got it there. So I appreciate the diversity of the groups you're seeking feedback from. I know I have read so many articles and seen so many news shows with regard to, deprivation of sleep, particularly in the COVID, pandemic time that we are, and stress and anxiety coupled with, less sleep. But I appreciate you even looking at this. We'll see what will be, of course, but I appreciate your the deep dive into this topic of making sure that students have adequate sleep and balancing all those scenarios, all of the work that went into all those scenarios to see what unintended consequences. Well, those are intended consequences, but you never know what may happen. But I appreciate the work that went into this presentation. It's kind of like the school calendar, I think. But yeah, thank you all. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Dr. Holmes.
I think you said that they came to school at the earliest was 6:45 in the morning. That some students got to school at 6:45.
At times we are dropping kids off as early as 6:45, 7, so that then we can get to the start the elementary routes.
Okay, thank you. So my question with that is, what is the pickup time if they're there at 6:45? What's the earliest pickup time you have?
We have 6 a.m. Sometimes with our special needs, it may be a little earlier. They're individual routes, and if you think about our geography, we serve kids and pick up kids on the other side of 601.
Right.
And so we've got a big district. So it is unfortunate. Many of us, and you included, who've been around the district for a long time, have always been fighting the need to get more buses. And so that's something that we continue to fight. But we know that that's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, that's a big concern here because I know 6 o'clock in the morning is very early to be ready and to get on a bus. So that's what I want to thank you. And I appreciate all the work y'all put into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Ms. Agostini.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I do have to say that I think I was the happiest of everybody in my household when we got out of middle school. So I didn't have to do that 7 o'clock drive to school to get my daughter there. So she was more fortunate because she wasn't there at 6:45. But how has the purchase of the buses with the bond impacted or reduced the late buses or helped transport these kids to school?
Great question. We're still using those, but right now, as you heard last board meeting, I believe, the driver availability. And so that's still, it's an issue. It's helping. Last year we had more. We were able to fill in routes like at Westwood, for example, to get them more on time. Buses that go down, instead of having to get a spare from the state, we pull those on. So we're using them as we have driver availability. Yes, ma'am.
So, well, I guess I'm wondering, would we have enough, if we had the drivers, would we have enough to run the elementary school at one time and high school if we had enough drivers?
We still don't have enough for those. The other part of the equation that comes into those, we don't get reimbursed from the state for using our own fleet. So it's a conversation we'd have to have with finance to make sure we have enough money to cover those additional routes. So we are doing those as needed, but we also need to make sure from a budget standpoint that we have enough funds in the general fund to do that for the upcoming school year.
Well, I guess you just raised a new question. I'm not quite understand. So we've got buses that we don't get reimbursed from the state to use. How do we pay for that, and what do we use the buses for?
Well, we use them for activities. We use them to get to and from school when we need to use those. We use them for a variety of topics like we normally do for buses. So we're using them for to fill in those gaps, but if we use, say, all 25 constantly, we'd have to pull more from the general fund. So we're using those as needed and as we have driver availability. So it's not like they're just sitting on the bus lot not being used. They're being used. They're just not being used to daily because we don't have the driver availability to do what you're suggesting. Now it will have an impact because we have to fuel those our own and we have to maintain those our own. We are doing that as we need to, but if we go 24/7, it's something we have to make sure our budget can handle.
Okay, and then I'm just going to put in a comment. I understand the point because, again, I was the first one to celebrate when we didn't have to do the early morning for middle school. But my big concern is for these elementary school kids that it's a safety issue, either being in the dark at the bus stop, or a lot of parents rely on these middle school kids or their high schoolers to come home and be at home when the elementary kids come home. So that's a safety issue that I think we need to take into consideration as we move forward on this.
Sure.
And that is a theory we've discussed. I think we'll find out more about that when we do our community conversations with parents.
Okay.
To see if that really is in fact the case.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Carson Parker.
As someone who had to battle the buses, and these principals are no longer here, Dr. Davis, you don't have to worry about that. Jack Carter and I couldn't figure out what was happening with these buses. They couldn't go pick up the high school kids on time. And of course, nobody would tell me anything. So we had a meeting with the elementary principals, and coming to find out, we had 4 or 5 elementary principals that would not allow the children to get off the bus. When the bus pulled into the school, they had to stay on there until a certain time. Then they would do that. 4 principals, 4 schools, 4 different times. So we went through a whole lot of rigmarole about that. And I do know that when in the earlier years, like in probably the 80s and early 90s, elementary school kids were pretty much the first ones who were picked up in the morning. It seems like it wasn't that early in the morning like it would be if we had to do it now. But they were picked up, and parents were very concerned, and rightfully so, just like Ms. Agostini said. They wanted to have somebody, if they had a middle school child, somebody home when the elementary school kids would come home. And that's why we changed it around and put middle school first. And it's been that way for the way it is now is the way it's been for many, many years. Many years. I think even when Colonel Hance was here, I don't know if anybody here remembers Colonel Hance, bless his soul. But it's always an issue. It's always an issue. But I hear those buses coming through my neighborhood at 6:15 in the morning. I said, good grief, these kids. You know, I don't think there's anybody out there. Their parents sit in the car with them and wait for the bus to come. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents worth.
So I appreciate the report is in depth and there's a lot to think about. I look forward to the survey results to see what the other parents or other folks say. I know for me, from middle school, one of the things is middle school afternoon activities. I feel like those should be pushed later anyways. It's hard for parents who are working to get to a lot of the middle school activities now because they're sometimes 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30, whenever it's time parents have to take off. That's just my 2 cents on the middle school activities. But it is a challenge. I know Ms. Agostini brought up the buses that we bought. They're activity buses. We made them yellow with all the safety features so they could supplement. But to your point, we do have to pay then for all of the resources for the maintenance and the fueling and the driver issues. We continue to fight finding drivers for our buses. So something we need to continue working on. I would personally advocate that if we could, to get it done and ready for 2021. I mean, I think it makes sense when after COVID, we come back to a new year and we go ahead and start a new bell schedule if that's possible. So I would advocate, Dr. Davis, and I guess you want to speak, but I would advocate if we could get that done. So, Dr. Davis.
I just want to, again, thank our team, our academic team, our logistics and operations team for putting together a great report. We've been working on this for about 1.5 years now. We've been discussing the importance of really considering the data as it relates to the amount of sleep that adolescents need. The data is clear that adolescents benefit more when they have more rest. We also consider factors such as the number of students in Poverty continue to rise in our school districts. We have more high school students who are working. Many of those students are working late afternoons and evenings, and then they have to get up and go to school the next morning as well. So that late, maybe a possible later start time for high school students would be beneficial for those students. Many things have changed since we went to middle schools going first and elementary going second, for middle school parents to for elementary parents to have an opportunity to have someone watch their children. We have a more robust after school program than we had when that change was made. And so those things can help mitigate some of those challenges when it comes to supervision of students if a family chooses to do that. We have not looked at the data to see how many families have elementary and middle school age children as it relates to the almost 28,000 students in our school district. So we'll continue to look at that data. We'll have that discussion in our advisory councils and our focus groups, the surveys and the community conversations, so that we can present a clear picture. But I do think at some point we either I shouldn't say that. I will present a clear picture so that hopefully we can come to some sort of resolution about the start times for our school districts and for our students. And I think we would be able to do it without too much of a disruption, but it will cause some growing pains to be able to make that transition for our school district. But with the end result in mind being the fact that we know the adolescents, both at the middle school and at the high school level, do need more sleep and the long-term impacts on their health. So we appreciate you all listening to this information, and we look forward to bringing back some more data once we had an opportunity to conduct these next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I would say the health of the family too, if you've ever tried to get an adolescent out of bed at that time. So thank you very much for your report. So we have 12.3, which is the second quarter financials. Then the next item is unfreezing the employee step for 2020, 2021, and then a budget timeline. So Dr. Davis, instead of me just introducing each of those individually, I'm going to hand them all three to you. And Dr. Miley, I assume we're going to see you for a few minutes. So.
Indeed, we have Dr. Miley coming before us to provide us first with our second annual quarterly financial update or report, followed by information regarding unfreezing the employee step for 2021 school year. This is an update for as well, and then giving you information regarding the budget timelines to spot. Dr. Miley.
And Dr. Miley, if you would just pause in between each so I can have people ask relevant questions for each of those sections, but we don't need to go through the whole intro every time.
I'll be glad to. I'm sorry that you have to suffer through three agenda items with me, but I'll try to make them as brief as I can. The first agenda item is our quarterly report, our second quarter report. I wanted to make sure that we all understand what this document is. It's basically a budget management document. It's kind of like if you wanted to go 25 miles an hour in your car, you want to look at your speedometer. Are you going 20 or are you going 30? It gives you some indication if you're going the right speed. So this is the second quarter. This is as of close of books of 12/31, the second quarter of the fiscal year. And it gives us a snapshot of where we are, both revenues and expenditures. It's primarily focused on the general fund. The general fund budget is the one that the board approves, and the administration brings your recommendation and the board approves. It's also it's the one we have some discretion over in how we spend it. Not a lot, but we do have some. There's some items that we're required to spend by law in the general fund, like the employer contribution to the retirement system. That's not a discretionary act by us. There are some hiring new teachers. That's somewhat discretionary. We can, if we want, to let class sizes get larger and larger and larger and not hire new teachers, or we can decide to hire new teachers. So some of the items in the general fund are more discretionary than others. That's the primary focus. It's the largest budget we have. It's roughly $300 million this year. It was $300 million last year. As you remember, back last April, you passed a continuing resolution. So we're operating under the same dollar amounts this current fiscal year as we did last fiscal year. So this is a kind of a snapshot of where we were on December 31st. We also include a lot of other financial information on here. We include all the EIA funds. There's about 100 of them. We get about $23 million in EIA funds. Those are from the state. Those are not discretionary funds. The board does not approve our spending those funds. Those are dictated by guidelines in the funding mechanism through the state. In fact, I thought if any of you have any sleeping issues, I thought everybody might enjoy a nice peaceful evening of reading a couple of 100 pages of the State Department's funding manual. This is produced by the State Department every year. You have the latest one on your desk. As you see, that's last year's. The State Department has not updated their funding manual, but this is their guidelines for how districts spend money, how they're allocated. So if you have a hard time sleeping sometime, you might pull that out by your bed and take a look at it. I'm sure you'll be asleep instantly. But we have those in here. When I say we don't have much discretion, the state tells us how those funds will be spent. And also we have, on page 4, we have our special revenues. Those are also very limited in terms of our discretion. Some are grant funds, some are federal funds, but they're not discretionary on how we use them. And so I wanted to make sure we use this report accordingly. There are other issues related to these funds. There are lots of programmatic issues in terms of why we're spending these funds the way we do. Finance, fortunately, doesn't make those decisions. We make sure the dollars are spent correctly and they're accounted for and that we have adequate funding for them, but we don't tell departments how to run their departments and what they should prioritize. And so those are worthwhile discussions. We'll be glad to hold those anytime we want to, but I wanted to make sure that for a nice purpose is to demonstrate that we're on target with our expenditures and with our revenues. For instance, on page 1, we have our revenues through the second quarter. We've got, this has federal, local, and state dollar in terms of revenues. We could go line by line, but basically we're in line. We also look at our last 5 years averages. In our last 5 year averages, we're a little bit above on our federal funding, we're slightly below on our state funding, and right on target, just a little ahead on our state funding. So our normal 5 year average is 38.2% of our budget funded revenues, and we're at 37.96. So the bottom line is, in terms of our revenue picture, we're right on target with our second quarter as we have in the last 5 years. This page 2, we have the expenditures for the general fund. These are the large categories of expenditures that you as the board approve in our annual budget discussions. These also, we like to look at, okay, how are we looking at these last 5 years? For instance, our salaries and wages, the last 5 year average is 40.3%. We're currently, as you can see, we've spent 39.1, slightly below the last 5 year average. We're right on target with our fringe and benefits. Utilities, the last 5 year averages were 38% of our budget by this time. We've spent about 35%. Our utility bill, surmise from that, our utility bills are a little bit lower for the first 6 months of this year than they were for the last 5 years, the first 6 months. The property contracts right on target, about 98%. Same thing with repairs and maintenance. Purchase services were a little bit earlier. We've just signed more annual contracts, and supplies and equipment were a little bit below, and our other objects are a little bit higher. But overall, our expenditures to date are about 42.8%. That's a percent below our 5 year average. So again, we're on target with our expenditure in terms of our last 5 year average. Looking at page 3, those are our EIA funds. They are dwindling every year. I think when I first started this 8 years ago, we were getting about $29 million a year in EIA funding. We're getting this year we're budgeted for $22.9 million. Again, this is also another time when I like to highlight where our fund balance is on these two types on page 3 and 4. Frequently we get reimbursed for some of these expenditures, and so our revenues lag some of the expenditures. You'll see that more so on the special revenue fund. But all of these are on budget. They're all allocated by the state, and they're all earmarked for specific types of expenditures. Same thing with our special revenues. We've got about $43.3 million of special revenues. We've spent about $12 million. We've received about $8 million. I think every time this year, when I review this, I mentioned that's a real nice reason to have a nice fund balance, because we're spending money we don't have yet. School board, page 5, the school board budget is in good shape. One of the things that you can see immediately from COVID impact, the travel budget for the board is $63,000, and you've spent about $1,400 so far this year. So COVID has impacted our budget throughout the whole budget process, including the board's expenditures. And the last page are our capital projects. These are our bond referendum funding. This again is not to date. We have spent a whole lot of money since December 31st, but this is as of December 31st, and we still have about $302 million to spend to complete our overall projects. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions or pause and answer any questions and then move on to the next slide.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Scott?
Dr. Molly, thank you so much for that report. It was so detailed that it limited my questions. But the only question that I have is, some of those grants that we have out there, will we lose that money if we don't spend it by the end of this year, or will it be able to carry over due to COVID?
I think the question was, will we lose money due to not being able to carry over funds because of COVID, because we didn't spend it?
Grants.
They vary.
Grants and
They vary by grant. We got a lot of extensions, I know, over the last 12 months. We can certainly look and see which ones may expire and may not have a carryover, but I know that we were granted a great deal of flexibility with most of those grant funding because of COVID, but we can certainly look at that.
Yeah, I would love for you to maybe do that in the board docket to let us know if there's any that will not be funded that will impact the budget that we have.
We would be glad to do that.
Thank you.
We try not to let that happen.
Yeah.
but we will look at that.
Ms. Agostini?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Dr. Scott's question was one that I had. Will we use it or lose it? And just as a suggestion, perhaps on some of these, maybe after each one, we could put like the month and the date that it expires if we're going to, for the different grants. But I do have questions too on the first page where it says the transfer from the EIA fund, and that's $8 million.
Yes.
Okay, we're able to, I guess I'm looking for more information and trying to understand what that is.
That's from the state.
Excuse me?
That's from the state. That's how they categorize it. I'm just going to get a simple word.
Okay. Well, because I'm looking at the EIA, the list, and we were talking about, or you had said or mentioned briefly before that it was not discretionary. And
we're not transferring from our EA funds. This is the state.
The state is okay. Okay, thank you. And then just a couple of questions on the special revenue fund about what is improving teacher quality.
I'm sorry?
Improving teacher quality, line number 267 from the special revenue fund?
Yes.
I'm curious about what is that?
I'm not sure. I can't remember. Improving.
And somebody can just follow up with me on that. And then also, I was curious about 936, the student health and fitness nurses. Is that?
I will find out.
Okay. And then my final question that I have is for the capital projects.
Yes, ma'am.
And the technology from the 2018-2019 8% funds.
Yes, ma'am.
It looks like we have a $2.5 million remaining balance.
Yes, ma'am, we do. We're trying to spend those, and we may have already spent those. These are as of December 31st, but we are spending those based on technology's needs for Chromebooks and infrastructure.
Okay, but so...
Trust me, knowing Tom has a plan for spending every dime of that.
So these monies don't have to be spent within a certain period of time?
Correct. Well, they do have a 5-year limit, but we are not past that yet.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we've typically had holdover, particularly in technology spend, in our 8% budgets that lag between 1 to 2 cycles in previous budgets, depending on also, Tom, if I'm not mistaken, staff time. Sometimes it's a matter of having staff to roll out certain components, and when they're available over things like summers and other times which affect that, if I remember correctly in the past.
We will promise we will not let that go to waste. And that I think I mentioned to Tom the other day, I don't think there's been a thing that he's asked for that hasn't been funded since I've been here.
Ms. Mackey?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Miley, for the deep dive. And I think I remember that we typically have technology money, I think, left over from year to year until it gets spent. So that's kind of a customary thing. But thank you for providing the education funding manual from the State Department of Education. It's very insightful to see the things that we have control over and the things that are mandated. It's a deep dive, but it's very helpful to have that visual. I appreciate that as well. But thank you and your team for getting information to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Miley, I know we have some money this year and travel you mentioned for the board, but I think this is maybe a staff impact too. I think the cost for travel as we open back up with fuel prices and other things may be going up. And I know there's some calculations that are given, but I want to make sure that as we work on next year's budget, we think about what that potential impact might be as things open up and we send teachers and staff and other folks out for.
I'm sure we will.
For those things. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Dr. Davis.
Point of privilege.
Yes.
May I get a point of privilege?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Point of privilege, I'd like to again thank you, Dr. Miley, for an excellent report. This is a lot of information, a lot of different budget items, a lot of different categories. It's very difficult to know each and every last one of them. I think it would be beneficial for us, and I think if we're looking for more descriptions from these areas to provide some sort of working document for the board as it relates to these descriptors. So what is EIDA? What is occupational education? So they'll have that as their information and as a standing document that could simply be shared with them. So we'll get that information to the board as it relates to something like the student health and fitness. If Ms. McAdams was here, she would be able to tell you specifically that student health and fitness is basically something that we had to apply for, but it was something that was done to allow school districts to hire and train elementary nurses through a special application process that districts had to apply for to receive the funding for. And so there are several little intricate parts like that. Once that information is done and applied for, it comes into the finance office, and the finance office maintains, of course, inaccurate accounting records of how those funds are being spent. But Dr. Miley and his staff doesn't necessarily know exactly every single category, but I think in the future it'll help our board and our public to know, at least that they will be assured that the board understands or every single category. I do not know what every single category, every part of the budget of the school budget is myself personally. And that's, but we'll make sure that we get that information to them. So.
Dr. I'll just to add on to that. I mean, in the past, Dr. Miley, you've had a lot more support from other staff pre-COVID. Usually we would have Ms. Dawn and other folks in their specific areas that could answer those questions and say you've been more left on an island with COVID and all these things. But also would prompt the board if you can think of these, if you have these questions ahead of time, get them to Dr. Miley and staff so that they can make sure that happy to answer them in the public, but give an opportunity for them to do the research so that they can provide you with those answers where possible. It certainly is helpful.
Well, that would be fine. That would be very helpful and certainly more efficient. But also, some of the time it helps to understand what is the issue, what is the concern or issue. That is it a concern that we're not serving a certain population, or is it that we're not spending all the money, or that so the more we understand about what the nature of the question is, that'll help us answer that question better.
Or even if you just really want to know what it is for just the sake of knowing what it is.
How are we spending that money?
Yes. Yeah. All right. I want to move on to the unfreezing of employee stuff.
Yes, thank you. On Thursday, March the 11th, the governor signed the joint resolution to reinstate the step increase for teachers retroactive to July 1, 2020. This is the annual step increase for longevity that all teachers, all certified employees receive if their district's salary schedule goes that high. If some salary schedules, they go to 30 years, some go to 27, some go lower. And so if you're not eligible for a step, you don't get that step. But the government, and due to the continuing resolution last year, that step was suspended. And normally it's just an automatic thing. It was suspended. And so no teacher got a step increase in July 1. None of our teachers did. None of the teachers in the state did. This legislature has found $50 million. It's not in the regular budget. It's not recurring, which are issues in themselves. But the state legislature has passed a $50 million joint resolution to fund the step increase retroactive, so no teacher will have missed a dime July 1 up until through this current year, and we'll issue those. The joint resolution requires us to issue those by June the 15th. We will do that. That does not need your approval. The state has done that. However, this district's tradition has been when the teachers get a step increase, all employees get step increases. There are lots of people that are very crucial and important to the district that aren't in the classroom, that make the classroom work and help make it a premier district. So as in the past, we're asking that the board approve. The board must approve by policy for us to adjust salary schedules for non-certified people. And so we're asking that the board approve a step increase for all employees in the district. And that will be for you to consider next board meeting. Just wanted to explain it tonight and tell you that's what we're recommending.
And Dr. Mark, before I open it up for questions, it says 1% to 2%. I assume when you bring it back to us, you will have a more defined structure of idea.
Well,
what that is.
yes. The salary schedules themselves are unique in that certain employees going from one cell to the next cell might get a 3.2 increase. Just how the salary schedule is established. Someone may be getting from another cell to another cell might be a 0.5. Some are 1.7. Some are 2.1. And so the average is right at 2%. And so we wanted to make more accurate and say everybody may not get a 2% raise because their salary schedule that they're on and in the cell that they're moving from one to the next may be 1.7% increase.
All right, so you're going away from previous years where you defined a percent, and you're saying it's
what we've done in the past is those who are not eligible for a step would get a 2% increase.
Right. Okay, I wanted to be, before we ask questions from the board, I just wanted to understand more what was going to come to us, because I assume next time when you're asking for that, you're going to give us a dollar amount and a better structure of what the result.
We will be bringing a budget estimate. Yes, we can do that. However, given that we have a couple of hundred salary schedules, there are a couple of 10,000 maybe cells.
Well, I wasn't looking for individual. In the past, y'all just would say we're going to give a 1% or a 2% increase.
What we'll do is say we'll give a 2% raise to non-eligible people who are eligible for STEP, and we'll give the STEP to everybody who's eligible for STEP, and that person will get the STEP that they're eligible for.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. So you're going to do that and a dollar amount when you bring us the actual. Okay, now I'll open it up. Dr. Holmes.
Mr. Malley, I'm glad that you said that, because that has been a bone of contention for me about the 2% of those people who are not on the salary schedule. So I'm just saying, I don't want it on the record. I'm all in for providing that 2%. I know in the past when we've had teachers that were not, such as myself, who are over that time limit or years, the district generally does match at least 2% cost of living increase. That's what you're saying, basically, correct with that?
Well, those who are eligible for a STEP will get their STEP.
They get their STEP, and then the ones who are not will get the 2% cost of living increase, correct?
Well, it's still, yes.
Okay, so that's what we're trying to propose to do for them.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to put that out there because I know that I'm one of those people who are past that 28 years on a teacher salary scale or 23 years on a teacher salary scale, and I've been saying this, and I hope the legislative body hears this, because that is, if you're talking about a teacher shortage anyway, you have to reward those teachers that have stuck in here and have stayed the course and have done this year after year. So I definitely think that we have to reward them additionally with at least that 2%. I appreciate it. And thank you so much, Dr. Malley, and for the boring book manual. I do intend to read it. And I thank you for a great report. And I'm glad that we're putting this out there, because I do really want the House and the Senate to hear that. It's not fair to give everybody else that and forget about those teachers who have longevity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey.
Yeah, and just for the sake of asking a question that I already know the answer to, just to put it on the record, it is true that not every district allows for this. I know that when you have state mandates, funded or unfunded, they go strictly by that mandate. But for this district to work to be sure that our entire population gets some sort of increase, as it were, is not something that every district necessarily does.
Correct. We're fortunate we have the resources to do that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the board? I just want to stack on top of Dr. Holmes' comment. I mean, I appreciate the fact that we do that for all employees, not just teachers who are beyond their time, but we do have a lot of other folks in the district that play critical roles that aren't even necessarily in the classroom, but still critical. And I'm happy that we've been able to help them in some way. Every year I've been on the board, and we've had a way to do that. So I appreciate the board and staff considering that all are treated equitably. Thank you.
Glad to.
Next.
The last item is our budget timeline. I try to encourage everyone to do these in pencil these days with a big eraser, but it is a draft. It's tentative. These dates may change, but it's our best estimate at this point of our timeline. So it's just for your consideration, and we'll be, as you see it includes a public session for our next board meeting and a discussion on employee surveys results.
All right, board members, any questions or comments on the timeline? Ms. Agostini?
I'm sorry, trying to get my microphone on. My question is for the February 6th budget priorities during board retreat. Did we do that or did I miss that?
Y'all did do that. Y'all did that with Nate. Y'all identified your budget priorities.
Oh, so we're not going to get the worksheet like we did before?
Well, I thought that's what y'all did that day. We can give you that worksheet again if you'd like, but that was what that session was.
I apologize. I went back and looked at the agenda and also the minutes and couldn't find any.
Yeah, we did perform that exercise, and Nate did mention that we were going to try it a different way this year, more of an interactive process, the way that was led, and he was going to get back to us, I think, in writing what those priorities were at the end of that. So
I guess I'm going to request to get that follow-up then, because I'm sorry.
Okay. And we can do the survey if we can. It's your choice.
Can we just get the report on what we have? And because I think unless there's some substantial difference, there's not a need to do additional work if what the outcome of that was, in fact, is what the board desires. So if we can just start there. Dr. Davis, I'm sorry, but I think that's the best way to go about it. Thank you. All right, other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Dr. Miley.
Thank you.
And next we have our draft agenda items for the April 13th, 2021 meeting. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, and to our members of the board, again, to our viewing public, and those of you who are in attendance with us this evening, I'm prepared to present to you the draft agenda for the April 13th regular scheduled board meeting. This board meeting is scheduled to start with a call to order and adjournment into executive session at 5:30. And under the executive session items, we have listed student appeals, student admissions requests into the district's adult education program. We plan to leave the executive session for the beginning of public session at 6 p.m., where we will follow with the inspirational moment and pledge of allegiance, ask for the approval of the agenda, which is followed by the approval of the consent agenda. We'll have our public participation at item 6.1, which is then followed by voting on executive session items. We'll have old business action requested, where we'll be asking for the approval to unfreeze employees' step for the 2020-2021 school year, which is followed by section 9.1, the superintendent's highlights, as well as a report on the dual class action lawsuit, 9.3, the capital improvement, update on capital improvement, and update on the budget. Agenda item 10, we will be focused on agenda items for the next meeting, which is the April 27th board meeting. We'll present that agenda. We'll ask for approval of that agenda, followed by public participation number 2, board superintendent comments, executive session number 2 if needed, and then adjourn, the voting on those executive session items if needed and adjournment.
All right. Board members, any questions or comments on the draft agenda? Ms. Mackey, you had a question? Ms. McFadden?
Due to some unforeseen situations that have arisen, I would like to yield the date for the dual class action lawsuit to be determined by Superintendent Davis and Dr. Miley.
Okay, so you're open to them moving that date depending
Yes.
on the time needed to get the results.
Right.
Okay. So we can, so I guess we need a motion. Do we need a motion, Dr. Davis, I guess, to take that off as a
Yes, sir.
report?
Yes, sir.
And, okay, Ms. McFadden, will you make a motion then
Yes.
regarding that you still want it, but just at a date determined by superintendent?
Yes, sir. I make a motion to extend the presentation date for the dual lawsuit from April 13th agenda and yield it to the determination of Superintendent Davis and Dr. Miley.
All right, motion made by Ms. McFadden, seconded by Ms. Mackey. All in favor, if you'll raise your right hand. Dr. Scott, if you'll voice vote. All right.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed? All right, so motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Okay, any other items for discussion on the draft agenda? All right, we will now move on to approval of the draft agenda. Again, the draft agenda now does not include the Jewel report. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the draft agenda items for the April 27th, 2021 Richland 2 School Board meeting, with the exception of the Jewel lawsuit presentation, which has been yielded for.
Okay, motion
Pleasure,
made by
the
Ms.
chair.
Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion? All right. Jill, are we good to do that via computer? Okay. So we will have the vote. Ma'am? Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Yes.
It's just a point of clarification. I misspoke and said April 27th in the motion, but it actually was for the April 13th.
That was your intent.
Just to put that on,
Thank
put that on record. Thank you.
All right. We have no one signed up for public participation, so we will move on to board and superintendent comments. Dr. Scott.
Just like to say congratulations to our national certified teachers, first time, second, as well as third. Also, thank you so much for those detailed presentations. Staying on that school start, I think that's so important, especially with kids standing outside early in the morning. It's so dark. So thank you for that extensive report. And as always, continue to stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, and 6 feet apart. Take care. I'll talk with you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too want to congratulate all of our national board certified teachers. I really appreciate the time and commitment to pursue this prestigious endeavor. And finally, want to thank Dr. Davis and all of our district employees for making phase 3 happen yesterday. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden.
I just want to say that I'm really interested in rethinking the school start time. I do have middle schooler students, and my daughter is probably asleep right now. She's been asleep since she got home from school. She'll wake up for about an hour to eat, and she's going back to bed. So I do appreciate you guys looking into this just to make sure that our students are healthy and that they're able to learn and be productive. So I appreciate that presentation. Look forward to the information about it. Thank you guys, and congratulations to the teachers that are continuing their education.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Ruth, I think you said this, well, for several years now, that we have the most national board certified teachers, I think, in the state. More than 700. That is just quite an accomplishment. There are districts that are bigger than, that are larger than ours, but for us to have the commitment of so many teachers who go through the effort it takes for that certification, so proud of them. Dr. Holmes, with regard to the legislative report, I appreciate that. I make comments on that, and just to remind people that all of the things that we talk about during that legislative, you can reach out to legislators and ask questions and get your input in at this time. It's just such an important part of what we're doing. So I appreciate that. And for the staff that we see here tonight, we know that it takes a lot more people to make the information that we share with the public. This is a board meeting, this is a meeting of the board, and the information that is compiled for us to be able to share information with the public. We're thankful for the people who are in the room, but there are lots more people who are not in the room. And of course, our teachers and folks who are working laboriously in the classroom to make the end product, which is educating our students possible. We just don't have enough thank yous to extend to you. But you all be safe and have a good evening. Bless you.
Thank you. Dr. Cushman Parker.
I want to echo congratulations to the National Board Certified Teachers, new and renewals, all of them. And to all the employees who are recognized this evening in the superintendent's highlights. And thank you, Dr. Franklin, Mr. Anderson, and Dr. Miley for your reports this evening. That school start time is it's always been an issue, and I think it will always be an issue unless we're going to really extend our school day, which of course we're not going to do. But that's always been an issue, and it's really difficult to work all of that out. But good luck. Been there, done that.
Ms. Mackey, you had.
I just wanted to say that we always, you always say something, but Dr. Caution Parker, I so appreciate the history that you bring to the board, having worked in different capacities. And when we're sitting here deliberating something, you know exactly how it came about. And we typically were there when the decision was made, having been deputy superintendent and principal and assistant principal and all for so long. So I appreciate the history that you oftentimes share with us when we are making current decisions that started a long time ago. And you're typically, not long ago, in the past, not a long time ago. But I just appreciate the history that you share with us. That's always enlightening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Holmes.
Okay, I'd like to first say congratulations to our national board teachers. That is such a rigorous process. And to have 700 in the district, that is phenomenal. Yeah. I'm so excited for you all. Congratulations. And congratulations to Ms. Mackey for your boardmanship. That's quite an accomplishment to get to that level. Also, congratulations to all the teachers and employees in the district. Y'all gonna get your money. So I'm very happy for you. Yeah. I hope in my district where I work, I get my money too. I understand. But I am happy for you. Congratulations to all the highlights that Dr. Davis gave us tonight. And thank you for all the very detailed reports that we had tonight. Everybody's report was very detailed. I know it takes a lot of work to do that. And I just want you to know that you are appreciated. And with that, you all have a good evening. Oh, and also my birthday is April Fool's Day. Yes. Okay. Don't laugh. It's an April Fool's Day. So all gifts are accepted. With that, have a good evening.
Just make sure you put it on your statement.
It'll go on my statement of economic interest.
Dr. Davis.
Again, I like to echo the sentiments of congratulating Ms. Mackey on reaching the highest level boardsmanship. Congratulations on that accomplishment. I also want to say congratulations or thank you to the board for approving the recommendations for the usage of bonuses for our teachers. Thank you and our employees. Thank you to the board for putting our teachers at the forefront of that decision, and all of our employees, I should say, who are benefiting from that decision. I want to say thank you on their behalf, on all the employees' behalf, on approving that recommendation this evening. And also want to say thank you to congratulations to our national board certified teachers, those who are being certified for the very first time, as well as who's receiving their their second and the first and second recertifications. And I don't want to end on a negative note, but I just want to quickly state that, our family is saddened and hurt by the violence that has been targeted against members of the Asian community in the United States. And the violence of this nature is contrary to the core values of our school district. So we express sincere empathy to our Asian students and parents, friends, neighbors, and community members. And we share their sadness on this senseless attack as we offer support to work together to improve relationships and heal hurt. We'll continue to do our best to provide a climate and a culture of acceptance and inclusion for all people in our district and community. We remind our students and parents and staff that they may speak to our school counselors and social workers or administrators who stand ready to provide support and resources for anyone needing assistance. So together we stand as allies with the Asian community as a model for how a community can come together to support those being subjected to injustices. So we support the voices of our Asian community members who are speaking out against these injustices. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And of course, I want to echo that the board feels that you made the comments, but the board absolutely supports our Asian community, and we will not and do not support violence against any member of our community, including our Asian community, since they've been targeted specifically. But with all the work that we do with supporting diversity and inclusion, we will not stand for violence against any segment of our school district. So thank you for those comments, and definitely want to say it loudly and strongly that the board supports any action necessary to protect and support our Asian community in the district. Also want to again congratulate Ms. Mackey on her award, all of our teachers for the hard work and staff. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to General Beagle and his wife Pam, who will be sadly leaving us, but on a positive note, another step in General Beagle's growth in the military. And I think at the end of the day, his leaving us will make us a better community as he grows in the chain of command in the military. So he is, I think school board members are maybe an invitation for an opportunity with our school district. And I say both he and his wife, because they've both been fantastic partners of the district, and they will be greatly missed. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank the board. I want to thank y'all so much from the bottom of my heart for 2 fantastic meetings. We've gotten a lot of business accomplished, and we've done it in a way that's cordial and working well together. And I want to say that publicly. Thank you all for the work that we've been able to accomplish in the last 2 meetings, and all that you do with that. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motions were made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Holmes. All in favor, raise your right hand or say aye. Aye. Phone. And it's unanimous. We're now adjourned. Thank you.